Have you ever realized the people who say they're family only remember your name when they need something? I didn't figure that out overnight. It took one phone call, one public humiliation, and one sentence my own mother said while looking me straight in the eyes. You finally become useless to this family. Funny thing was, she couldn't have been more wrong. Because while everyone in that room believed I'd lost everything, not one of them knew they were standing on the edge of asking me for the biggest favor of their lives. And by the time they learned the truth, it was already too late. Claire Morgan spent years quietly supporting her parents and younger brother, believing that sacrifice was simply what family meant. But after one business setback, the people she loved wasted no time treating her like a burden instead of a daughter. What they didn't know was that Claire had built a successful company and a life they had never cared enough to understand. As hidden financial secrets begin to surface, her family discovers that the person they took for granted is the only one who can save them. The question is, after everything they've done, will she?
My name is Claire Morgan, and until last year, I honestly believed hard work could solve almost anything. Maybe that's because I grew up in a house where problems never disappeared. They simply found their way to me. If my younger brother missed another rent payment, I handled it. If my parents' electric bill was overdue, I paid it. When my dad's truck broke down 3 summers in a row, guess whose credit card quietly fixed it every single time? Mine. Nobody ever asked if I could afford it. They just assumed I'd find a way. For years, I convinced myself that was what families did. You helped, you sacrificed, you showed up, even when nobody showed up for you. Looking back now, I don't think I was helping them. I think I was making it easier for everyone to pretend they didn't have responsibilities. The strange part, I wasn't even the oldest child. That was my brother Tyler. But Tyler had mastered something I'd never learned. He knew how to look helpless. And helpless people always attracted sympathy. Responsible people, they attracted bills. I own a regional freight logistics company outside Savannah, Georgia. Nothing glamorous. We move medical, supplies, restaurant, equipment, industrial, machinery, anything businesses can't afford to lose. It's stressful. Work. One delayed. Shipment can cost clients hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most people only notice logistics when something goes wrong. I built my company from 1 rented warehouse and 2 used delivery trucks. The first year, I slept on a folding cot in my office more nights than I slept at home. The second year, I nearly lost everything because one customer filed bankruptcy before paying a 6-figure invoice. The third year, everything finally started working, slowly, steadily, nothing spectacular, just honest progress. Exactly the way I liked it. My family never really understood what I did. Whenever relatives asked, my mother would shrug and say, "Claire drives trucks," or something. I stopped correcting her. People only misunderstand you for so long. Before explaining yourself starts feeling like begging to be seen. 3 months ago, everything changed. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. Our largest manufacturing client called an emergency meeting. The entire executive team looked exhausted before anyone even spoke. Their overseas merger had collapsed. Overnight, budgets were frozen, expansion, projects canceled, every outside contract, including mine, was terminated immediately, just like that. 40% of my projected annual revenue disappeared. My operations manager stared at me across the conference table. What do we do? I looked around the room. Every employee was waiting for me to panic. Instead, I smiled. We've survived worse. Had we? Not exactly. But leaders don't always have the luxury of saying what they're thinking. Sometimes your confidence becomes everyone else's paycheck. So that's what I gave them, confidence. Inside, I was already recalculating payroll, loan, payments, fuel, contracts, warehouse, leases, every number. In my head was moving faster than traffic on an interstate. Still, I wasn't afraid. Businesses recover, markets change. That's part of owning one. What scared me was something else. Friday was family, dinner, and somehow news always reached my parents before I did. My mother had an invisible network. Church, friends, neighbors, former coworkers, people who somehow knew everyone's business. By lunchtime, if somebody sneezed across town, Mom probably heard about it before dinner. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway that Friday evening. 3. Unfamiliar cars already lined the curb. I sighed. That usually meant an audience. The front door wasn't even fully open before my aunt, Linda, smiled too brightly. There she is. Inside, everyone suddenly got quiet. My father stared into his coffee. Tyler wouldn't look at me. Mom folded her hands together like she was about to lead Bible study. That was never a good sign. You should have told us, she said. Told you what? She tilted her head. The contract. So they knew? Of course they did. It happens, I answered. We'll adjust. She exchanged a glance with Tyler. That glance lasted maybe 2 seconds, but I'd seen it my entire life. The silent conversation, the one that always ended with me paying for something. Tyler finally spoke. So, what happens now? I laughed softly. I keep working. No, he said, I mean financially. There it was. Not, are you okay? Not, can we help? The drive home felt different that night. Not because of what anyone had said, because of what nobody had. I kept replaying the dinner in my head, hoping I'd missed something. A question, a little concern, maybe even a simple, are you going to be okay? Nothing. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being their daughter and quietly become their contingency, plan. It hurt. Not in the dramatic movie scene kind of way. It was quieter than that, like discovering a house you've lived in for years has a slow leak inside the walls. The damage didn't happen overnight. You just finally noticed it. The following Monday, I called my accountant. Let's go through everything, I said. He laughed. Everything, everything. For nearly 3 hours, we reviewed every automatic payment leaving my accounts. There were more than I remembered. Half of Tyler's rent, his health, insurance, my parents, property, taxes, their internet, a landscaping. Company dad insisted he could no longer manage himself. The storage, unit Tyler forgot he still rented, a monthly payment for my mother's church fundraising pledge, even subscriptions. Neither of them knew we're still billing my card. One by one, I highlighted every expense. Then I asked a simple question. If I stopped all of these today, my accountant adjusted his glasses, you'd free up almost $82,000 a year. I stared at the screen. $82,000. I wasn't supporting my family. I was financing another household entirely, maybe 2. For years. Quietly, without complaint. No wonder. Everyone thought I could absorb any setback. I'd been carrying everyone else's weight. For so long they'd forgotten what standing on their own felt like. I took a slow breath. Cancel every payment. That legally belongs to me. He looked up. You sure? I've never been more sure. I expected guilt. Instead, I felt strangely calm, not happy, not angry, just lighter, almost like putting down a backpack you forgot you'd been wearing. 3 Days later, the phone started ringing. Tyler ignored. Mom ignored. Dad ignored. Then came the texts. Tyler, rent, bounced. 5 minutes later, did something happen? 10 minutes later, landlord says payment never came. An hour later, Claire, I set my phone face down, not because I wanted revenge, because for the first time their emergency wasn't automatically mine. The next afternoon, my father called from a number I barely recognized. I answered. Hi, Dad. A long silence. Then, the county says the property. Taxes weren't paid. I know. You usually handle those. I used to. Another silence. We got a notice. I imagine you did. His voice stayed soft. You could have warned us. I almost smiled. Warned them? Like they'd warned me before deciding I should move back into a house. I'd helped maintain, like they'd warned me. They believed my career was over before asking if I was okay. I wasn't interested in keeping score, but I was done, pretending the scoreboard didn't exist. I've decided everyone should start managing their own bills, Dad sighed. Your mother isn't taking this well. I know, she proved him right 20 minutes later when Mom called. She skipped, hello? What is wrong with you? Good afternoon, Mom. Don't be smart. The church donation failed. I canceled it. You embarrassed me. I closed my office door. No, Mom. I stopped paying for something that wasn't mine. She inhaled sharply. You've changed. No, I've stopped hiding how things have always been. Her voice cracked. We're family. There it was, the sentence I'd heard my whole life. We're family. Funny how those words only appeared after money disappeared. I have a question, I said. She hesitated. What? When was the last time you called just to ask how I was doing? Silence. When was the last time you visited my home? Silence again. When was the last time you asked what my company actually does? Nothing. Not because she didn't know, because she'd never wondered. Finally, she whispered, that's different. No, it really isn't. Then I ended the call. That evening, my operations manager Marcus knocked on my office door. You look like you haven't slept. I haven't. He nodded toward the window overlooking the warehouse. You know, I've worked for you 8 years. I've never seen you choose yourself. That sentence stayed with me. Choose yourself. Why did it sound so selfish? Why did it feel so unfamiliar? The following week, something unexpected happened. For nearly a full minute, neither my father nor I spoke. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, not angry, not defensive, just tired. Finally, he said, I didn't know your company was listed. I leaned back in my chair. You signed the loan. I signed where your mother told me. That answer would have frustrated me a month earlier. Now it just made me sad. Dad had spent 40 years letting other people make the decisions while convincing himself he was keeping the peace. The problem with avoiding conflict is that eventually conflict finds you anyway. I need the whole story, I said. I don't know all of it. Then tell me what you do. No, he hesitated. About 2 years ago, Tyler wanted to buy into a commercial landscaping business. That surprised me. Tyler had mentioned dozens of business ideas over the years. A brewery, a food truck, an online clothing brand. Every one of them disappeared after a few weeks. I'd never heard about landscaping. Mom said it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Dad continued. They needed investors quickly. How much? I thought around 200,000. I looked at the paperwork. It wasn't 200,000. Silence. It was nearly 2 million. Dad stopped breathing for a second. What? I have the loan. Documents in front of me. Another long pause. I never saw these papers. I believed him because Dad never handled paperwork. Mom always had. As soon as we hung up, I called my attorney. Her name was Rebecca Lawson. She specialized in corporate, fraud, and commercial litigation. If there was anyone I trusted to tell me the truth without sugarcoating it, it was Rebecca. She listened quietly while I explained everything. Then she asked one question. Did you sign any personal guarantee related to your family's finances? No. Ever? No. Good. I emailed her scanned copies immediately. 20. Minutes later, she called back. Her voice had changed. Claire, this is serious. I figured. The signature appears forged. I know. But that's only part of the problem. I waited. Someone also listed your company as a financial reference capable of supporting repayment. What does that mean? It means whoever submitted these documents wanted the bank to believe your business strengthened the application. I never authorized that. I know, she paused. I want the originals, and I want them today. By lunchtime, we were sitting inside her conference room. Every page lay spread across the table. Rebecca examined each document carefully. No rushing, no guessing. When she finally leaned back, she folded her hands. I'm 99% confident you didn't sign these. What about the other 1%? The bank has to determine that officially. She looked directly at me. But Claire, you need to prepare yourself. For what? If this is fraud, someone close to you committed it. Those words stayed with me the entire drive home. Not because they were shocking, because deep down, I already knew who handled every financial decision in my family. Mom. She always filled out forms, managed paperwork, scheduled appointments, controlled every account. Dad ever opened, she'd always said it was easier. That way, maybe it had been. Until now. The next morning, my office receptionist buzzed me. There's a woman here asking for you. Who? She says she's your mother. I froze. Mom had never visited my office, not once, even after 8 years. I looked through the second-floor window. There she was, standing in the lobby, looking completely out of place among freight coordinators, dispatchers, and warehouse managers. She slowly turned in circles, staring at the walls, the framed awards, the employee recognition plaques, the regional maps, the company timeline stretching across the hallway. She looked confused, almost like she'd walked into someone else's life. Because she had. When I stepped downstairs, she smiled awkwardly. I didn't realize, she glanced around again, it was this big. I almost laughed. Neither did I. At first. This isn't a good time. I only need a minute. I led her into a small conference room. The glass walls overlooked the loading docks where 18 trucks were preparing afternoon departures. Drivers walked confidently through the building. Warehouse. Supervisors called instructions across the floor. Forklifts moved with practiced precision. Everything around us reflected years of work, years she had never bothered to see. Mom noticed employees greeting me. Morning, Claire. Need anything, Claire? The office felt unusually quiet after my mother left. Not because anyone knew what had happened, because I did, for years. I'd imagined the day I'd finally stand up for myself. I thought it would feel victorious. Instead, it felt like watching an old bridge collapse. You know crossing it isn't safe anymore, but seeing it fall still hurts. Rebecca called before lunch. I've spoken with the lender. That was fast. They're taking this very seriously. What happens now? They're opening a formal fraud investigation, and they've frozen enforcement against your company until ownership of the signatures is verified. I finally exhaled for the first time in days. My employees weren't going to pay for someone else's decisions. That mattered more than anything. The following week became a blur. Bank, investigators, signed affidavits, handwriting, samples, interviews. Rebecca handled most of it. She insisted I stay focused on running the business. Let the evidence do its job, she kept saying. Don't argue with people. Argue with paperwork. I liked that. Facts. Didn't care who cried louder. Meanwhile, Tyler finally showed up, not at my office, at my house. I had just finished watering the small flower beds overlooking the marsh when his pickup rolled into the driveway. He climbed out slowly, hands shoved into his pockets. He looked older. Somehow, not physically, just deflated. You've got a nice place. I looked toward the water. I've lived here almost 3 years. I know. No, you know now. He couldn't argue with that. We stood outside for nearly a minute before he finally spoke. Mom says you're trying to destroy us. I laughed once, quietly. Is that what she said? Pretty much. And what do you think? He shrugged. I don't know anymore. That was the most honest sentence I'd ever heard from him. Did you know? I asked. He frowned. Know what? About the loan. He looked genuinely confused. I knew Mom borrowed money. How much? I thought maybe 100 grand. I studied his face. He wasn't acting. He truly didn't know. It was nearly $2 million. His entire expression changed. What? And my name was forged onto the paperwork. Color drained from his face. I swear, I didn't know. For the first time in years, I believed him. Tyler had benefited from the money, but someone else had built the lie. He sat down on the porch steps. I never asked her to do that. I know. I thought investors backed the company. What company? His shoulders dropped. It never actually happened. What do you mean? The deal fell apart before we even opened. So where did the money go? He looked embarrassed. I honestly don't know. That answer frightened me more than anything else. $2 million gone, without a business to show for it. Before leaving, Tyler surprised me. I'm moving. Where? I found work in North Carolina. Construction equipment sales. I nodded. Good. He looked at me for a long moment. You know, I spent my whole life thinking Mom believed in me. He laughed bitterly. Turns out she never did. What makes you say that? If she really believed I could succeed, she wouldn't have needed your name. He walked back toward his truck. Halfway there, he stopped. I'm sorry. No excuses, no explanations. Just 2 words. It wasn't enough to erase 20 years, but it was real. Sometimes that's where healing starts. 3 weeks later, the bank completed its preliminary review. Rebecca called me into her office. She slid a document across the desk. They've confirmed the signatures don't match. I read the first paragraph, then the second, then I stopped. So, I'm released from liability, she smiled. Assuming nothing changes during the final investigation. Yes. I closed my eyes. Months of tension left my shoulders all at once. What happens to everyone else? Rebecca folded her hands carefully. The bank will pursue repayment from the actual borrowers. And if fraud is confirmed, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. That evening, Dad called. His voice sounded different, stronger somehow. I moved out. I nearly dropped my phone. You what? I rented a small apartment. What about Mom? We both need time. I had never heard my father make an independent decision, not once, until now. I should have protected you, he said quietly. When you were younger. When your business started. When your mother kept asking you for more. I always told myself I'd speak up tomorrow. He sighed. Tomorrow became thy. A lot of people think the story ended when the bank cleared my name. It didn't. That was only the moment I stopped carrying someone else's burden, learning how to live afterward. That took much longer. About 6 months later, Rebecca called me with the final update. It's over, she said. The investigation is officially closed. I leaned back in my office chair. And? The bank accepted the forensic handwriting report. Your signatures were forged. I closed my eyes. What happens now? The debt stays with the people who signed the documents. Your company has been completely removed from every filing. I thanked her before hanging up. Then I just sat there, not celebrating, not crying, just breathing. For nearly a year, I'd walked around feeling like someone had quietly tied a weight around my ankles. Now it was gone. That afternoon, I walked through the warehouse without saying much. Employees waved. Drivers joked with one another. Forklifts moved in neat rows. Everything looked exactly the same. But I wasn't. Sometimes freedom doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it feels like an ordinary Tuesday where your shoulders finally stop hurting. A few weeks later, Marcus stopped by my office. You got a minute? Sure. He sat down and slid a folder across my desk. We've been nominated. For what? Regional Employer of the Year. I laughed. By who? Our employees. That surprised me more than any business award ever had. Marcus smiled. You know why? I shook my head. Because nobody here is afraid to make a mistake. What do you mean? They know you'll teach them instead of humiliating them. His words stayed with me long after he left. Maybe that was the difference. I'd spent my childhood in a house where love depended on usefulness. So I'd built a company where respect came first. Spring arrived. The marsh grass turned green again. One Saturday morning, I was planting flowers outside my townhouse when a familiar pickup truck pulled into the driveway. Dad stepped out. He looked healthier, less tense, older, but lighter. I brought lunch, he said, holding up a paper bag. We sat on the back patio overlooking the water. For almost an hour, we talked about everything except the past. Fishing, weather, baseball. It felt strangely normal. Eventually, he broke the silence. Your mother still asks about you. I kept looking at the water. How is she? He sighed. She's learning that consequences don't disappear because you cry. That wasn't cruel. It was simply true. A few minutes later, he reached into his jacket pocket. I found something. He handed me a faded photograph. I smiled immediately. It was me, about 10 years old, covered in sawdust, holding a tiny birdhouse beside my grandfather. I'd forgotten that picture existed. He always said you finished what you started, Dad said quietly. He was right. I looked at the photograph for a long time. Maybe I'd spent years trying to earn approval from people who weren't capable of giving it, while forgetting the ones who already had. Before leaving, Dad stopped at the end of the driveway. I know I can't fix everything. I know, but if you'll let me, I'd like to keep showing up. For the first time in my life, I believed he would. Tyler surprised everyone, including himself. About 8 months after moving away, he called. I got promoted. Congratulations. I wanted you to hear it from me, he laughed. You know what's funny? What? They don't know anything about our family. So they only judge me by the work I do. And I kind of like that, I smiled. So do I. The holidays looked different that year. Smaller, quieter, healthier. There were fewer people around the table, but there was also less pretending. Sometimes peace requires empty chairs. One afternoon, nearly a year after everything happened, I received an unexpected letter. Not from a bank, not from an attorney, from one of our warehouse employees. Inside was a handwritten note. It read, You probably don't remember this, but 3 years ago, my wife got sick. I thought I was going to lose my job because I kept missing work. Instead of firing me, you told me to take care of my family first. Yesterday, my daughter graduated from nursing school. That only happened because someone believed people mattered more than profits. Thank you. I folded the letter carefully, then placed it inside my desk drawer, not with tax records, not with contracts, with the few things that actually mattered. People still ask whether I ever forgave my mother. The answer is simple. Yes, eventually. Not because she earned it, because I didn't want resentment renting space in my life forever. But forgiveness didn't mean returning to the way things were. Some bridges aren't rebuilt, not out of anger, out of wisdom. Looking back now, I realize something. The